Imagine a car with over 500 horsepower, a car that weighs less than the family sedan parked in your driveway, a car that can out-accelerate a Formula One machine on a loose gravel road, sideways, in the dark, inches from a wall of screaming fans. For 4 short, violent years in the 1980s, these cars were real. They were the fastest, wildest, and most dangerous rally machines ever built. And in the end, they were so terrifying that the sport itself had to ban them to stop the dying. This is the story of Group B, the deadliest era in the history of motorsport. To understand how it all happened, you have to understand the rules, or rather, the lack of them. In 1982, motorsport's governing body, the FIA, introduced a brand new category for rally racing. The idea sounded reasonable enough. Give the manufacturers freedom. Where the old classes demanded that thousands of road cars be built before a model was allowed to compete, Group B asked for just 200. And for the special evolution versions, the truly extreme machines, only 20 examples needed to exist anywhere on Earth. There were almost no limits on power, no real limits on turbo boost, no limits on the exotic, expensive materials engineers could use. The result was inevitable. The world's biggest car makers handed their most ambitious engineers a blank check, pointed them at the forest, and said, "Win at any cost." What those engineers built changed motorsport forever. The revolution began with one car, the Audi Quattro. While every rival sent power to just 2 wheels, Audi sent it to all 4. On loose gravel, snow, and mud, 4-wheel drive was a superweapon. The Quattro could put its power down and rocket forward exactly where the competition spun helplessly and slid. Within a single season, every serious team was scrambling to copy it. Then came the turbochargers, then the mid-engine layouts, and the numbers began to climb into madness. Officially, these cars made around 400 horsepower. Unofficially, in full qualifying trim, the most extreme of them were producing well over 500. From tiny engines, in cars built from Kevlar and carbon fiber that weighed barely 900 kilograms. The most insane of all, the Lancia Delta S4, could reportedly sprint to 100 kilometers an hour in under 2.5 seconds. Not on tarmac, on dirt. Group B created a grid of immortal legends. There was the Audi Quattro, the all-wheel drive pioneer that started the entire war. The achingly beautiful Lancia 037, the last 2-wheel drive car ever to win the World Rally Championship back in 1983. The Peugeot 205 Turbo 16, a pocket-sized rocket that crushed all comers in the final seasons. The brutal Ford RS 200, the howling MG Metro 6R4, and the wildest creation of them all, the Lancia Delta S4, a car so advanced it used both a supercharger and a turbocharger at the same time, eliminating lag and delivering savage, endless power from idle all the way to the red line. These were not modified road cars. They were purpose-built weapons, hiding behind a familiar everyday shape. And it took a very special kind of human to tame them. The names became legend. Walter Röhrl, the thinking man's genius of car control. Ari Vatanen, fearless, spectacular, and impossibly fast. Stig Blomqvist, Hannu Mikkola, Markku Alain, and Michèle Mouton, who, behind the wheel of an Audi Quattro, became the first and only woman ever to win a round of the World Rally Championship, and came within a whisker of taking the title outright. These drivers wrestled over 500 horsepower through black forests, over snow-covered mountain passes, and across open desert, very often at night, with nothing but a co-driver's calm voice reading the road that came next. They were, quite simply, among the bravest competitors the sport has ever seen. And to witness one of these cars in person was an almost religious experience. Group B machines didn't just go fast, they assaulted every one of your senses. The engines screamed with a savage metallic fury. Flames and deafening cracks exploded from the exhausts every time a driver lifted off the throttle, the violent signature of their anti-lag systems. At night, the stages became something out of a fever dream. Blinding spotlights carving through thick fog, sparks showering from beneath the cars as they slammed over crests and landed enormous jumps. The Finnish drivers, the so-called flying Finns, became famous for launching these machines 40, 50 meters through the air at full throttle. No wonder the fans came in their millions. To stand at the edge of a Group B stage was to feel the very ground beneath you shake. But a dark shadow was growing over Group B. The fans. Rally is unlike any other form of racing. It isn't run on a sealed, fenced-off circuit, but on real public roads, through tiny villages, through dense forests, with spectators standing right at the very edge of the action. And as the cars got faster, the crowds grew bolder. Footage from the era is genuinely frightening to watch. Hundreds of thousands of people lining the stages, leaning out into the road, reaching out to slap the bodywork as the cars flashed past at well over 200 kilometers an hour. Drivers spoke of cresting a blind jump straight into a solid wall of human bodies, a wall that would part somehow at the very last possible second. Everyone could feel it. This could not last. And in 1986, it all came crashing down. The warnings arrived fast and hard. The previous year, Ari Vatanen had suffered a monstrous high-speed crash in Argentina that nearly ended his life and kept him out of racing for over a year. Then came Portugal, the opening round of the 1986 season. A driver swerved at speed to avoid spectators who had wandered into the road. He lost the car. It speared into the crowd, killing 3 people and injuring dozens more. Horrified, the leading factory teams packed up and withdrew on the spot. Group B was now under a global microscope, but still the sport pressed on. The cars were too fast, too popular, too profitable to simply switch off. And then came Corsica. Henri Toivonen was the brightest star of the 1986 season, young, brilliant, and faster than anyone alive. On the second day of the Tour de Corse, on an impossibly narrow mountain road lined with trees and sheer ravines, his Lancia Delta S4 left the road at speed. There were no barriers. There was no runoff. The car tumbled into a ravine and, fueled by its lightweight plastic tanks, instantly erupted into a fireball. Henri Toivonen and his American co-driver, Sergio Cresto, were killed. There was almost nothing left of the car but its bare metal skeleton. Within hours, the FIA had made its decision. Group B was finished. The even more extreme cars already being built for the future, a class to be called Group S, were cancelled before they ever turned a wheel in anger. From the end of 1986, the monsters were banned forever. The greatest era in rally history was over almost as suddenly as it had begun. And yet, nearly 40 years later, we are still talking about them. Why? Because Group B represents something we will almost certainly never see again. A brief, brilliant moment when the rule book was torn to pieces, when engineers were handed total freedom, and when the only goal that mattered was to go as fast as a human being could possibly go, and then somehow find a way to go faster. The cars were too powerful, the roads were too dangerous, the risks were impossibly, tragically high. But for 4 short years, rally racing reached out and touched the absolute outer limit of what was possible. And in doing so, it became immortal. The Audis, the Lancias, and the Peugeots of that golden, terrible era are now among the most valuable and worshipped machines on the planet. That was the rise and fall of Group B, the deadliest and the greatest era motorsport has ever known. If this story gripped you, subscribe to Automotive Stories for more legends from the world of cars. And tell me down in the comments, which Group B monster is your all-time favorite? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.